Today we're working on pruning crepe myrtles. I've got a medium-sized crepe myrtle here that I'm going to walk you through the correct pruning techniques as well as the pruning tools that you'll need in order to safely and efficiently get the job done. The general rule of thumb when you're pruning is that you shouldn't cut anything bigger in diameter than the handle of whatever you're using to cut it with. Here's your main pruning tool that you'll use the most often in your hand pruners. Obviously you can see based on the diameter of the handle, anything finger size or smaller you'll be able to cut, make the detailed cuts with the smaller blade. Next you have loppers. These are extendable loppers so they can reach out further to get limbs that are further away. And the size of the handle here is larger than thumb size, so you're going to be able to prune limbs that are up to an inch or so in diameter. Anything bigger than that, you're going to want to use a pruning saw. This particular saw is long and narrow, comes to a point, so that helps you get to the tricky areas that may be a little more narrow than a typical saw. You also want to make sure that you don't forget your gloves. Of course, the other thing that you'll need is a step ladder or a taller ladder if the crepe myrtle is larger. But you always want to make sure that you examine the ladder first to make sure that all of the safety mechanisms are in place. There's no damage to any of the fiberglass or the supports. The first thing I like to do when pruning a crepe myrtle is start at the ground level to take off any of the limbs that aren't adding to the form of the tree. In general, you like for the crepe myrtle to be ice cream cone shaped with a rounded top. So you see this limb is not really adding to the form of the tree and it's encroaching toward the sidewalk. So we'll take that one off. You can take off a lot of these smaller limbs by hand. Just kind of clean up some of the larger limbs. You also want to look for dead, diseased, or dying branches, or any branches that are crossing or rubbing, or that don't add to the overall form of the tree. With your gloves on, often you can just run your hand up the branch and clean off a lot of these smaller suckers. Unless there's a safety concern or an environmental concern, you don't want to take these trees down too far each year. Oftentimes we'll cut them just below where the seed pods were from last year. In this particular case, we're taking it down to where the main branch starts, below the fork. And that'll be the starting point. Again, we want to make sure that we've cut the top in an ice cream cone shape. So on the outside, that's going to be your height all the way around, and then as you make the cuts into the middle of the tree, you want to raise them up each time. We also have one over here that we've finished already. You want to make sure that the height of the two trees on either side are consistent. Again, right now we're just going through the interior of the plant, trying to remove some of these smaller limbs, clean it up a little bit. sharp edges on these trees and a lot of sharp edges on the pruning tools that you're using, and these can help protect you from getting cut and seriously injured. And as I mentioned before, if you've got gloves on, you can just run your hands up and down the limbs and break off a lot of these small suckers. Now that we've cleaned out a lot of the body of the tree, a lot of the smaller limbs and the branches that were just causing the congestion, we're starting to work on the top of the tree. So you want to make sure your ladder's nice and sturdy. So I've already made a couple of cuts, as you can see. We've got a tree next to us that we've already pruned. So you want to make sure to try to keep the height consistent from one side to the other. And as I mentioned before, you want to have the branches in the middle that are taller than the edges, so that it gives it that mounded ice cream cone shape. Now that I'm up here, I'm seeing another branch that's not really adding anything to the shape of the tree. So what we're going to do is, we're just going to take our loppers, cut the whole thing off. So that it's out of our way. There's nothing worse than having a branch that ultimately is going to end up being cut off, that you spend a lot of time cleaning the top of it and then realize that you just needed to cut it off in the first place. So I try to get those out of the way first so I don't spend extra time being inefficient. If you're in doubt with any of your cuts, always make them a little higher, because you can come back and take more off. But if you prune it too low, then that's it till next year. You have to prune it again. In order to keep the mounded ice cream cone shape, you want to start with your lowest cut. You want to make sure that each cut into the interior is a little bit higher. That we just cleaned off that ultimately just needs to go because it's not even as tall as the other ones in the center of the tree. You also want to make sure when you're up on the ladder that you're not overreaching. That could cause you to lose your balance and fall. It's better to just work in the space that you can reach comfortably and then climb down and move the ladder to another part of the tree. I typically move the ladder 2 or 3 times each time I'm pruning a Crape Myrtle, just to make sure that I'm